Hi, everyone. I'm Dave List, Director of Technology and Market Solutions at NEEP. Welcome to our 8th annual Heating Electrification Workshop. It's awesome to be with you all today. Really appreciate everybody's time and interest in being part of this event. It's great to be joined by our Executive Director, Ara Scher. Hi, Ara.
Hi, Dave. It's great to be here. As you know, I came on to NEEP in March of this year, so this is my first heating electrification workshop inside the tent. It's great to be here. It's great to see you back. For much of the time that I was here, you were away on sabbatical, and believe you me, I got really deep into the weeds on heating electrification. Probably lost in the weeds is a better way to put it. So it's nice to have you back.
Congrats on completing that crash course this summer. Big thanks to our NEEP team for making this possible. As you mentioned, it's been a fairly light lift for me to come back and have so much of this this program ready to go. So again, big thanks to the team. Big thanks to the panelists and speakers who will be part of the program today. This, as I mentioned, our 8th annual started back in 2014 in Newport. This is really about bringing the right stakeholders together, focusing on market transformation, and that still is at the core of our annual workshop. Hopefully, we can do this in person again next year. So, Ara, what are some of your kind of big picture observations that give you some optimism about where we're headed with heating electrification?
Yeah, sure. And before I go into that, I just also wanted to thank our sponsors. It's really our sponsors who allow us to put events like this on, and bring together the speakers and the participants. We'll be talking about this quite a few times, but we have a record number of participants this year. Last time we looked this morning, there were over 250 people registered. So I guess I'll use that to lead into the first thing I'm excited about, which is that the interest in heating electrification and the technologies is just growing and growing. And it feels like beginning to scale across a lot of our region. I was up in Maine a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and Governor Mills got up and announced that over the past year, Maine has installed over 28,000 heat pumps, which is double the number that they had in 2018. Big numbers, and we're seeing greater commitments and greater goals in New York and Massachusetts and other states. So it really feels like a traction is starting in a transition time. And it's great, as you mentioned, NEEP has been working in this space for a year. So it's fantastic to see that trajectory continue to go up. And then I guess the other thing I'd say is, we've got active federal partners back at the table. So back in May, DOE announced a national initiative for clean heating, and including cold climate heat pumps. And again, since NEEP's been at it, it's been a while since we've had such strong federal leadership on this, and that's, I think, great. It's gonna be a great couple of years for moving this market quickly. So obviously, I mean, Dave, that means it's smooth sailing, right? Everything's awesome, and this is just going to be a celebration for the next 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. I think the wind is at our back. We've got a lot of progress on goals and policy. I think the challenge is really around implementation and getting that right, and still plenty of barriers for us to be addressing, whether it's awareness, confidence, workforce, equity, affordability. I mean, the list goes on and on. But I think we at NEEP certainly believe that the collaboration piece in solving these issues and moving them forward is our secret sauce, certainly. So yeah, no, we've got a lot of work to do.
Well, you want to give a little sneak peek of the secret sauce? What's kept the NEEP team busy, and maybe a couple of things we can expect looking forward?
Yeah, this year, I think, in general, we just continue to expand the kind of the scope and the breadth of the initiative. We really sort of grew out of a residentially focused, air source focused initiative. And I think that is one of the really exciting areas as you'll hear in some of the program, the scope is certainly broader, encompassing a lot more heating electrification technologies. certainly building out from our product list, and adding categories and adding tools and resources for various stakeholders in the market. So it's like I said, there's always plenty to do, but staying focused on those sort of core market transformation strategies, I think has served us well.
Yeah, part of my crash course was learning a lot of new acronyms, and I have a background in the federal government, so I thought I really knew my acronyms, but I certainly learned a lot of new ones over the past 8 months. So it's great to see that. I'm really excited for the next 2 days. I think we've got some incredible content. I'm really looking forward to the sound bites and the quick back and forth between folks. And I'm really happy to see that we're starting and leading with equity. Affordability, you listed off the barriers, and affordability was in there. I think that's a big challenge across our region, not only upfront costs, but also operational costs, and making sure that heating electrification avoid some of the pitfalls that energy efficiency fell into over the years in terms of equitable investments and equitable benefits of the work. So I'm really looking forward to the kickoff of that.
Oh, great.
And then again, the participants, 260 and climbing. So I'm hoping we'll have people in the chat and people asking questions. Now I can ask my questions that I had all along without being embarrassed. So I'll be doing that as well.
Thank you, Era, so much for helping us getting warmed up today. I think I have to push you to the backstage and cover a few housekeeping pieces before we get to our first panel. So thank you. Yeah, I wanted to hit on a couple of, again, housekeeping pieces, as well as make a couple of additional thank yous for the organizations that are helping to make this all possible. Our lead sponsors, Mitsubishi, Daikin, Connecticut, Train, supporting sponsors, Fujitsu, Abode. Thank you so much. We also have our initiative subscribers, and this is a long list that is tough to capture in one slide, so nice job on that. As well as our broader ally network, which really supports not just our heating electrification initiative, but the broader breadth of work that we do at NEEP. So thank you, allies. And we have additional funders that are working in this to help us do this work as well. So thank you to the foundations, DOE. Thank you. As well as our state partners. You get the sense that we collaborate and are supported by a lot of people, organizations to make this work possible. So thank you. A couple of things to note, as you can see here, closed captioning will be on. I believe that there's a fairly simple way of managing that if you are interested in turning that off. The idea that we have the chat function and the question function, we really are encouraging folks to use those so that we can so you can be part of the program. A lot of questions and input will be funneled to some of our panelists and enable them to sort of get a sense of what your questions are. So please do engage that way. And what am I missing? Lastly, I think I got everything. How am I doing? Did I miss any key logistics on this piece? I think we're okay. So I'd like to welcome my colleague, Derek Conduction, because he's going to be kicking off our first panel. Derek's our fantastic buildings and technology associate and new dad. So when he's just coming back from a little bit of time to have with his daughter. So welcome, Derek.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks everyone for being here this afternoon. I'm really excited to be back. Yeah, as Dave mentioned, just had a daughter a few weeks ago, and I'm still I'm getting up to speed, but I'm excited to be here to talk more about a issue that is important to me and is definitely becoming much more relevant in our current initiatives around heat pumps and improving our heating and cooling programs and policies in the region. So I believe Dave, you'll hop off. And
yep,
I'll
hand it off now. We'll talk to you all later.
That sounds great, Dave. Thank you. So again, everyone, I just wanted to say thanks for being here and good afternoon. As some opening remarks on this session, it is about how we can produce and think about heating electrification with the most equitable lens possible. And historically, only people of privilege in a majorly white dominated industry have been able to reap the benefits of clean heating and cooling, that have the capital and the resources to have the education, the purchase, and the quality installation of heat pumps in our homes and buildings. Meanwhile, historically marginalized people and communities have contributed the least to climate change and air pollution, yet reap the least amount of the benefits from clean heating and cooling tech. So nowadays, different organizations are looking for creative and innovative ways to help people of overlooked cities and towns, to help them reap these benefits through programs, through education, through improving the workforce, and giving different types of funding to get these initiatives off the ground. This session will hear from the representatives of those organizations who seek to increase equitable access to heat pumps and pass on those benefits to the most people possible. In general, we are not able to meet our clean energy goals without engaging the most amount of people from all different types of economic statuses, different types of educational levels that have the training and the resources to look further into heat pumps. This is actually an issue that I find very important and drives a lot of the work that I do, because I do believe that the clean energy future has a place for everyone. As someone that has a stutter, it is extremely important to me to make everyone feel like they have a part in the future ahead of us when it comes to clean energy and heat pumps. So with that, I would like to introduce our panel today, and I believe one of our panelists is running a bit late, so we'll get started without him. So I would like to introduce today our first two panelists: Lisa Dobbs, Program Manager at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center; Nikki Joseph, Building Electrification Programs and Policy Manager at the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate and Sustainability. And lastly, Barrett, founder and CEO of Lockpower, who's running a few minutes late, but should be joining us shortly. So with that, I would like to invite Lisa and Nikki to give a quick introduction of themselves and their organization, and to speak to some of the work they have been doing that's relevant to increasing equity with heat pumps and clean energy. And then I will be asking some questions that will be guiding our conversation. So with that, I invite Lisa to go first. So Lisa, please go ahead. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Derek. It's really a pleasure to be here today with this great group of humans. My name is Lisa Dobbs. I'm with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, or MassCEC, as I have in kind of my name there. For those that are unfamiliar with MassCEC, we are a ratepayer-funded quasi-state clean energy economic development agency. A lot of language there, but ultimately we're focused on helping grow the clean energy economy in Massachusetts through a variety of means. I've been with MassCEC about 7.5 years, working in various capacities, from rebates to community-based initiatives like Heat Smart, which has focused on clean heating and cooling. And most recently, I've been part of several teams sort of exclusively or even mostly focused on equitable access and environmental justice issues related to these topics. Again, mostly focused on direct programming and grant making, which includes Empower, which is a program I'll discuss later. And we're also just working to add equity mechanisms and tactics to all of our programs broadly. So looking forward to digging in on this. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lisa. And Nikki?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Nikki Joseph, and I work in the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate and Sustainability on our social and environmental policy team. And I lead our office's building electrification efforts, both on the programs and on the policy side. And I've been here for about 3 years, and it's really been remarkable how within this relatively short window, the conversation has gone from should we electrify to we have to electrify, but how, which is the much trickier question. And I'm really glad to see equity at the forefront of this workshop, as it's certainly something that our office strives to keep in the forefront of all of our initiatives as well. In particular, my work lately is focused on Electrify MIC, which is a new program we launched to help spur heat pump adoption on Staten Island and soon to be in Queens as well, through partnering with local community organizations for outreach. And the program also features a workforce development goal to increase the market share for minority women-owned business contractors, small businesses, through assistance with obtaining certifications for incentive programs, providing no-cost manufacturer training and business development courses and resources. So really excited to get more into that program. And outside of my program, my colleagues in the mayor's office have also done a lot of amazing work around electrification and equity, in particular looking at how we prioritize social infrastructure upgrades in city-owned buildings, looking to reflect health disparities, and also how we can best serve affordable housing through our other programs. So really happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Lisa and Nikki. And Donnell will hopefully join us in just a few minutes, but in his absence, I say let's not push back the conversation. And so I'll just tee up our first question that I would like to hear from the both of you on, both from your personal opinions as well as from the viewpoint of your organization. And that is, the first question is, what is the effect of centering equity in our work, and what was the impetus that allowed your organizations to craft and implement programs that were addressing inequities in the clean energy economy? And in addition to that question is, what happens, in your opinion, when we don't put equity first and we design policies and programs that don't serve financially underserved towns and cities and communities? So what was the impetus for the programs that you both work on around equity? Nikki?
Sure, yeah, I can go first. So, equity has always been something that we've talked about in our office and tried to incorporate in various ways. And in particular with this Electrify MIC program, it's really looking at the workforce element of equity. Here in New York City, we did some research on what our workforce needs are, and looking at some rebate data, we found that statewide, a single company likely makes up between 25 to 40% of all of the rebates in New York State. And the top 7 companies are 63% of the rebates. And so there's a big kind of monopoly from a few different companies in the workforce space, and trying to think through how we do that. That's why we kind of wanted to have a program to help promote smaller and minority-owned businesses to have that bigger market share. And in thinking through in general kind of why equity is so important in getting it now, we're designing policies and goals for 20, 30 years out. And so we really are at a crucial time where we are carving the path for many decades to come. And so it's important to do it right now and not kind of expect for that to shake out later. I think there's often this fallacy that in the beginning, it's easier for pilots to go for, the low hanging fruit of market rate customers, of folks who can afford to electrify very quickly. But, and while there is hope that, more folks electrify, overall the costs go down. We also see folks who end up kind of getting trapped in that cycle. And, as more and more folks leave the gas system, lower income folks are left on it and left to share a larger portion of grid maintenance costs and see their energy bills rise. And so it just perpetuates that system and kind of puts folks farther and farther down. And so really it's important to do it now to get it right for these longer term plans and to make sure that, no folks are left behind from the start and not as an afterthought.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikki. Lisa, is there anything you want to add from the Mass PEC lens?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first, maybe I'll maybe address the last part of the question first, but I think one thing that's also, I think, valuable for me to state is I just want to acknowledge that I have, and I think a lot of us have had a role in perpetuating this sort of cycle, right? And this lack of access. And I don't think we did it intentionally. We had sort of good faith blinders on, thinking that our work was reaching everyone. And like I said, it wasn't intentional, but maybe we weren't approaching things intentionally. And so in thinking about putting equity first, now we know that that's what we need to do in sort of the design of, any of our programs. I think a good impetus for us was our community-based programs like Solarize and Heat Smart, where great community-based initiatives, really successful, in promoting adoption and education, but sort of we saw the writing on that, we're reaching this certain subset of communities, tends to be mostly white, mostly affluent, mostly single family homes. And well, okay, why is that? And without, the means to be able to broadly change the program, even by adding sort of funds, we weren't hitting the mark and we were leaving folks behind. So I think that's been sort of the impetus in some of our newest programming, where we still want that community-based focus because we think that's valuable, but we need to take a drastic and centering that equity first. And I think just to echo the perspective, we've got these really ambitious, in Massachusetts and more broadly, ambitious and necessary climate goals. And so from a practical but also small perspective, we have to center that equity. Because we have to bring everyone along. It would be literally impossible not to do so. And so that's, I think, my take on that as well.
Awesome. Thank you both. And I just wanted to send a quick reminder out of the audience, if you have any questions you want to ask as we go through, please have those in the chat and we'll address them at the end of our questions. I think those are some really good approaches to why equity in our work as we develop the energy efficiency economy is so important, that we aren't going to meet our clean energy goals. We aren't going to pass enough opportunity onto the most amount of people without putting equity first in our programs. I'd say, just to expand on that, a follow-up question is, thinking about the different barriers, because I think when we talk about equity, we like to address inequities without necessarily, exploring, like, being proactive and giving further opportunities. And I think there is a balance of the two. So kind of leading off of what's the main impetus around including equity, you know, in our state and regional programs is really understanding the main issues. So I'm curious, in your opinions, what are the main barriers that are facing historically underserved communities and is hindering their ability to access clean heating and cooling tech? So between financing, training and education, building ownership, dynamics, such as if you rent or own a building, the lack of a skilled workforce, which do you identify as being the most pressing barriers when we think about equity? And please do feel free to talk about the programs that you are working on and how these are addressing one or more of these barriers. So Nikki, I think you went first last time. Lisa, is there, based on the work you are doing at the Mass CEC, what barriers are your programs addressing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of barriers, right? You know, there's a lot that you mentioned, and, you know, they can be sort of varied, and it's certainly not a single issue. I do think that one of the main approaches we're continuing to focus on is education. You know, like I said, a lot of communities have been left out of like a program like Heat Smart. And I think something that's been really interesting, I think my eyes have been open to recently, is underserved. I think we automatically kind of think low income, which of course is extremely important, and there's a lot of intersectionality there. But when our networks and outreach have tended to only include certain demographic sections, especially like from a racial perspective, and we know where the adoption already lies, we know that there's probably plenty of households, let's say of color, who might actually be able to afford these technologies, but simply don't know about it or their benefits. So they're underserved in the sense that we're being very siloed in who our networks are and who we're reaching out to. And so one of the ways that we are, you know, approaching that with Empower, for example, is, you know, some of the program models or projects that folks could employ is reaching out to, you know, let's say exclusively minority networks. It doesn't necessarily have to be environmental justice, but minority networks to spread the word about maybe solar or clean heating and cooling or something of that nature, and having an intentional focus on that. And so I think that's one of the barriers we're hoping to address, is to continue to diversify the network and broaden that access there.
Right. I really like what you said about, you know, especially with their Empower program, different communities know their issues best. And this is a concept that crosses, you know, heat pump adoption, local and state policy. Like the people that live in these communities might, you know, be able to do something about them, but lack the tools and the resources to take action. And that's something that we see really often. So I can really appreciate that. Nikki, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I mean, those are all really important barriers that you listed, and I feel like I could easily talk for an hour about any of them. I also agree with everything Lisa said about, you know, access and making sure that we're meeting people where they are. You know, a thing that we've noticed also with our program and kind of reaching New Yorkers is that New York is a very diverse city with a lot of languages spoken, and a lot of folks don't speak English, and so it's very hard to you know, try and engage a homeowner if you don't have the right folks on staff who can, you know, meet them in their language needs and provide resources in Spanish or Cantonese or whatever. You know, knowing the community that you're going into and having the resources that best meet that community is really important. And so we've been trying to make a conscious effort to understand the dynamics, the demographics, and have that resources on staff to be able to do that. And also just simplifying the process for participation. There are a lot of folks who may be interested in, you know, applying for an incentive incentive program getting a heat pump, but the application process is very cumbersome or overwhelming, and somebody simply doesn't have the time to fill it out and wait for the rebate. And so we want to really try and simplify that process, demystify it, work directly with homeowners to understand how the process works, help them through it, and then identify any barriers that we can then take back to incentive program implementers and come with suggestions and ideas on how to make that process much easier. And that goes not only on the homeowner side, but also on the workforce side, for contractors to be able to apply to incentives. We've heard that's a major barrier, just the amount of paperwork associated with that. And so really just simplifying the process and making it as easy as possible for people to be able to participate in this and understand it. And also just to go back to kind of access and education, our Electrify program is the first program in the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate Sustainability that's exclusively focused on small buildings under 25,000 square feet. And also our first one focused on Staten Island, which is often sort of feels like that they're the forgotten borough, because we tend to focus on these larger skyscrapers who may be bigger polluters from a GHG standpoint, but also may have a different demographic that lives in them and that is able to do those upgrades. So I would say those are really big ones. Financing is of course a major issue, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I think, we can talk about the barriers all day. Like you said, Nikki, and we can have a program and staff that will address each one of these. Definitely one big one, and I'm seeing some comments come in that are about education and about awareness. And a big part of actually NEEP, the work that we do is, we are trying to not only accelerate the market adoption of air source heat pumps, but we are trying to produce resources that can be understood and used by as broad of an audience as possible. Our air source heat pump buying guide does explain what is a heat pump, how do they work, what is a application that might align with my scenario, and these are supposed to be either with support from a community or with kind of on your own means. This will empower a homeowner to take the steps to make a informed purchase that is a heat pump or similar. So I'd say I would just like to keep kind of talking about some examples of how we're seeing this play out. Lisa and Nikki, you're both involved in programs that help lift up communities and give them the tools that they need to think more holistically about carbon reductions, about heat pumps. What are some of the how are you seeing the resources that you are putting into your programs be used? And I know, Lisa, there are some, you work with different organizations that apply for some seed funding that allows them to build capacity and increase their reach as far as possible. How are you seeing it being used in real life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of our sort of key features of this new program is offering sort of that early stage seed funding to just support in hiring staff and doing research and doing outreach, and sometimes it's a grant to get the bigger grant or a grant to just get towards doing more of the work. And we've seen a lot of excitement around it. We actually opened the program in August, and we got 11 applications from sort of various CBOs that are not only exploring really exciting ideas, different workforce initiatives, creative financing on heat pumps and net zero. We're also seeing them bringing in more partners and bringing in more CBOs and developing new partnerships, because community-based organizations, CBOs, throwing out acronyms there. And sort of enhancing the reach and the conversations around these things. And I think that capacity building, I think, is also maybe one of the things that we might, not just in this program, but maybe use it as a mechanism in other programs to help continue to increase access to, kind of like Nikki said, it can be challenging sometimes to just write a grant or to access an incentive. And that's, I think, has been a fundamental gap left for a long time. And so we're sort of excited to see that sort of uplifting or connectivity and filling that gap.
Great, thank you. Nikki, is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, admittedly, our program only launched about a month ago during Climate Week. And so we are still definitely in the process of understanding how we can best support contractors and homeowners. But so far, it's been great to just really understand what the barriers are. We've had a lot of interest from contractors, both before the program launched and holding a focus group and kind of understanding what would be the best needs to serve contractors that are on Staten Island, but then also understanding the various avenues we can go to help them. For example, a lot of folks just simply don't have time to do all of the paperwork and the organizing and the things that it takes on the back end before they actually go out and do an install. And so, our state, NYSERDA, New York Energy Research Development Authority offers a lot of money for on-the-job training and internships. And so understanding how we can be a hub and connect contractors to different resources that they may not know of or may not have the time or the capacity to go and research and find themselves has been really great. And also kind of adding on serving the community, and from another angle more on the policy side is, providing them with spaces that are healthy and can foster community growth and development. So another project that a colleague of mine is working on is looking on how we prioritize upgrades to social infrastructure that is city owned. And by that, I mean organizations and facilities that support community needs and deliver critical services. So things like libraries, shelters, health clinics, and such. And so, working with our Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which funds all these upgrades to municipal facilities, she's been working on a prioritization metric to incorporate equity into the decision-making process of the pipeline for how we decide which buildings receive upgrades. So, looking at things that are neighborhood risk factors for heat vulnerability, looking at asthma hospitalizations, traffic rates, and things like that, to be able to look at where these buildings are clustered in communities that could most use a upgrade and use the space that's safe and healthy for them to gather and receive those services. So giving back to the community also come up from the city level on more of a policy level. Great. As all great stuff. And I really enjoy hearing like the initiatives themselves and the process in which you are engaging more people and communities. So I would like to zoom back out because we are joined by our final panelist, Panel Barrett of Lockpower, looks to be out in the field, and I wanted to invite him to do a quick introduction. And Danelle, Nikki, Lisa, and myself were just talking about our programs and how we are engaging more people from a variety of backgrounds to be involved in our programs to get out more heat pumps and to get more awareness around climate tech. So I think this is pretty relevant to the work that you work on. So I would invite you to chime in.
Great. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Sorry for being behind. I'm in California and got our time zone stuff screwed up with my schedule. Yeah, so I'm Danelle. I work at Lockpower. I'm the CEO there. We focus on decarbonizing buildings, and the tagline is we want to turn your building into a Tesla. We want to make it all electric, greener, healthier, smarter with modern equipment. And we focus in low-income communities, moderate-income communities, communities of color, communities with working people, to let them know that the benefits of clean energy are for them. We have projects in Staten Island and all the other 5 boroughs. We've completed over 1,200 projects or projects in 1,200 buildings. A lot of those are multifamily apartment complexes, a lot of churches, synagogues, schools. So we've been really excited to learn more and more about how to deliver clean energy to a broad range of New Yorkers across the city, from every walk of life, every nationality. we've been really proud to participate in that. You know, in our viewpoint, we have a $50 million line of credit with Goldman Sachs, where we borrow capital from Goldman, we purchase clean energy infrastructure, and then we lease that equipment and infrastructure to building owners who otherwise might not be able to afford it or might not be able to access capital on their own. And so by lowering the upfront cost of the equipment, as well as I said, by the city, reducing the complexity, the paperwork, project management capabilities, we've been able to, we believe, lower a lot of the cost of helping buildings decarbonize. Not only in New York City, but out in California, where I am, we have building electrification projects on both coasts in DC and Maryland and Milwaukee and Las Vegas and a couple other places. And so we're learning more and more about how to decarbonize buildings across the country, and, you know, super excited to be here with all of you today.
Great, thank you for joining us, even out in California on the West Coast. So, you know, we're kind of in the middle of our conversation about like what innovative ways we are exploring and using to incorporate equity and reach the most amount of people as possible in our programs. I guess, you know, kind of as we come towards the half end of our conversation, I think a good question is where do you hope your programs go, and where, you know, what do you see the scale of these programs around equity being in the next 5 years? And have you experienced any setbacks? For example, is it hard to work with contractor-based or organizations that work with contractors that are having a hard time either with the pandemic, or they can't get homeowners to take the time out of their day to be home and let them in? Like, you know, what are some real world issues that you've experienced in implementing these programs around equity that you'd like to share today? Nikki, how about let's start with you if you have any insight you want to share.
Yeah, so definitely this Electrify program is a pilot. And so the hope is after the program will finish in 2 years. And our hope is that using the lessons that we've learned from this, we'll be able to launch a larger citywide program to serve all the boroughs. The hope is that we'll get more funding, we'll have more capacity, and kind of have that groundwork and the infrastructure set for what works on Staten Island and in Queens that we can then expand across the city. Also working with our small business services department, which has been great in connecting us with business development resources that contractors may find interesting. They are very interested in following this program through and thinking if they could have a sort of central citywide hub for that training as well. And so, you know, the ideal would be that if this goes well, they would be able to also kind of formalize that and make a much more cohesive, streamlined process. So eventually maybe folks wouldn't need a program like us to be able to just go and find those resources themselves. You know, the idea is really to have this be a community-led program. And so even after our program ends in 2 years, if unfortunately we don't get city funding to do this, these community organizations are trained on what heat pumps are, know the benefits, and can continue kind of promoting on their own. And so the goal is to kind of make it be a thing that lives beyond this pilot, but then also hopefully find another program that is much broader at the same time. So I'd say that's the main goal for that program.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikki. Lisa, is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, right? Our program is also a pilot. It's in the early stages. We're doing a lot of learning and discovering. I think ultimately we'll continue to seek funding, you know, and continue to serve maybe more and more groups. I think one of the setbacks we faced initially was we got 29 applications and probably had funding for about 10. Right. So we were like, oh, what do we do? And, you know, we're in the process of maybe getting some more funding given the importance, you know, of the work here. But hopefully bringing more attention to the need and the interest here. And then, you know, I think continuing to, you know, I think relationship building is really important for this program. And so continue to keep relationship building as a focus, reach even more CBOs, bring in other organizations, maybe like Lockpower, who are doing this really cool work. And I think also, you know, thinking futuristically, I think a lot of one-off projects might happen under this program, but I think what it can also do is inspire program models that maybe we or other larger agencies can take on, maybe that have more funding. We did that with our heat pump program and Mass Save, or the stories are just going to get out there, get told, and feasibly influence future policy. And we know that there's going to be a lot of different types of developments that are needed to sort of reach our goals, especially with clean heating and cooling, because it's so multifaceted. So I think there's going to be a lot of different types of solutions we're going to need, and so we'll hope to just kind of continue to crowdsource those solutions over time.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And Danelle, I think a little bit different from the other two programs are the Lockpower model and how you do business. Do you believe that the current Lockpower business model can scale beyond where it is now, and how do you see that playing out over the next few years?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we're in 10 states now. I mean, I think ideally we'd be in 20 or 25 states 6 months from now across the country. So that's one. I think next week, if all goes well, we're going to announce a project where we're going to decarbonize the entire city in the next 4 years. And so the mayor is going to announce a project to decarbonize, all of the buildings and switch them from fossil fuels to heat pumps and install electric vehicle charging for all of the cars, certainly all the vehicles owned by the city to run off clean energy. And so in our view, it's great to expand, but we also want to go deeper, right? And so we want more and more cities. We want 3 cities, 4 cities, 5 cities to commit to full-blown decarbonization of the entire city, and not by 2050, because who cares, but by 2026, right? 5 years from now, where there's accountability and you can hold a mayor accountable for what they were able to accomplish. So we're excited to announce that project next week. I think that up in Massachusetts, a great candidate for something like that. We'd love to find a city up in Massachusetts to also commit to fully moving away from fossil fuels. I know Lawrence, Massachusetts, I know there's a big, gas explosion there and everybody's sick of natural gas up in Lawrence. And maybe that's a city that we can get to commit to electrify the whole city in 5 years. So for us, we really want to start to demonstrate that you can take whole, we work closely with the mayor's office in New York, and we retrofitted 800 apartment buildings in Brooklyn, right, in 36 months. And so we've seen that you can do community retrofits at scale through a very successful program we did with the city of New York, which was discontinued. But now, how do you take that from a neighborhood to a whole city? And how do you take that from 1 city to 5 cities? And I think if we can decarbonize 4 or 5 cities over the next few years, that's really going to create a precedent and a set of case studies, and that will allow hundreds of other cities around the country to feel like they can be confident when they say that they want to publicly commit to decarbonizing as well. So that's what Lockpower is up to.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for that input. And I think kind of as we think more about how do we, sell the concept of heating electrification, as a way to improve our towns and cities, I'm curious, and there is a question that just came in the chat is, how much traction have you all made with connecting heat pump and clean energy adoption with other public health benefits, as well as workforce and education? Have you found success in framing the resilience of our buildings and towns as a non-energy benefit of getting more heat pumps out there? And I invite anyone who wants to go first to go.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak on this. This is something that's very important to our office as well. As I mentioned, I'm on the social and environmental policy team. So a lot of my job is looking at how social policy can overlap with environmental policy, and health is a perfect example of that. We did a market research study about 2 years ago now, before we launched this Electrify program, looking at how we can best market heat pumps to consumers, and looking at the top 3 motivators for somebody to adopt the heat pump, at least in the small residential space, we found one was any potential for cost savings, which makes sense. But number 2 is health, and number 3 was safety. Number 2, health, the idea that they have a more clean home with better air quality outdoors as well as indoors if they seal up their home. And also the idea of safety in terms of, the risks of natural gas and having a combustion system in the home. And also even just from the practical perspective of if they have a clunky window AC that could be poorly installed and fall out and cause damage to a small child or pet versus a, professionally installed heat pump that provides cooling. And so really kind of how we incorporate health and safety as part of our messaging has been a big priority for Electrify NYC, and stressing that, do you want a comfier, safer, more healthy home as part of the selling point. We've had a lot of traction with that. And also in thinking through some of these larger upgrades to, essential city facilities, working with hospitals and with the health department has certainly been something that we've just kind of started to have conversations on how we can have a more robust partnership, work together to unlock different funding structures and different resources from both the health space as well as the, sustainability and energy space. And I think kind of solidifying that partnership will provide both of us with a lot of benefits in years to come and making these things happen.
Excellent, excellent. I totally agree. Lisa, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would certainly just echo everything that Nikki said. And I think ultimately, I do think that conversation is gaining traction. I think maybe people have been having that conversation, but maybe not making those direct tie-ins. But one thing we've seen through what we've been doing with the program so far is sort of even just opening up those discussions or putting those notes, that we're looking for proposals that are talking about air quality or indoor development, that people are starting to make those connections and putting in applications and coming up with ideas that have those focuses where maybe if we didn't intentionally mention those things, maybe it just never would have kind of come about. So I think that there's a lot more that's going to come from that in the future, especially as if we can see more things like that, what else can we design around those focuses and how can we influence that more? So.
And also just to add on top of that, I know we've been talking a lot about, this is about heating electrification, but this is especially relevant when we talk about gas stoves and looking at, whole home electrification. And so I think as the conversation goes into more whole home electrification, that's going to be a major, major point.
Yeah, I think for us, I think Governor Hochul in a couple of weeks is going to announce a new project we, with one of our partners, are going to be mapping air quality all over New York State. So we'll be mapping methane, we'll be mapping black carbon, we'll be mapping greenhouse gas emissions more broadly across the state of New York, particularly in the Bronx, down in Brownsville, where people are trying to build a couple new natural gas pipelines. I don't know how natural it is. So we'll be mapping all of the crappy air quality that's going on throughout New York. I've seen some of the data. It's like worse than you think it is, by the way. And so as we map that outdoor air pollution and we share the data with community residents, they are, really going to be appalled at the kind of public health impact to them and their kids. And so we think that air quality analysis is going to be really relevant to helping people understand the benefits of electrification, of moving the neighborhood and their individual building off of fossil fuels. We've kind of pioneered this approach out in California with our partners there, where we're mapping air quality in West Oakland and then have a partnership with the government to decarbonize and electrify apartment buildings in Oakland that have that air quality. And so we think as we all get more and more data on methane, nitrogen dioxide, black carbon that we're breathing in every day and that our kids are breathing in every day, it's going to push more and more people to focus on the benefits of clean air and clean energy in their home, right? And in their kids' school. And so we do think there's a massive public health relationship with clean energy, particularly in communities that have been historically neglected and redlined. And so the data makes that stuff explicit. And so part of what needs to happen is empowering communities with financial and technical tools so that they can address the problems that the data is going to so clearly display.
Great. I think that is so spot on of identifying where are the public health crises and then, making them a top priority for getting in heat pumps, improving air quality, doing the cross cutting of, passing on these benefits all at once, because it doesn't have to be a phased approach when there are so many, issues that are facing, these towns and cities and individual buildings every day. So, doing that work to identify who are the worst energy users, where is the air pollution the worst, I think, is a very strong strategy when it comes to thinking more equitably about heat pumps. That does, however, bring me to my next question, which is about the practicality of thinking about heat pumps and clean and climate tech in the lens of equity, which is that what do you think needs to happen at a program and policy level to make sure there are clauses around equity in every policy and every program? Is it just the one-off business like Lockpower that has a very innovative approach, or is this the start of a new era of equitable policies, programs, and business? Does anyone have any? Yep, go ahead.
You can see the results of the clean energy industry not focusing on equity now. We haven't everybody says, oh, all the coal miners in West Virginia, they can get jobs in the solar industry. Well, guess what? They didn't get jobs in the solar industry. And the jobs that they did get in the solar industry pay far, far less than the jobs that they had in coal mining. They pay less. And so clean energy as a whole is suffering because we've underinvested in equity. Now we can't pass national laws because we haven't invested enough in equity on the ground to ensure that a broad base of communities and a diverse base of stakeholders actually benefit from the clean energy economy. Because we haven't done that, we don't have the votes to pass our legislation through the Senate. So this idea that clean energy is gonna be something that happens and maybe it'll be equitable or maybe it won't be, and no, it's either gonna be equitable clean energy or nothing. Those are our choices, because if you don't do equitable clean energy, you will never have the vote in America in a rapidly increasing diverse America where the base of the Democratic Party are people of color. You will never have the vote to support clean energy at scale unless you figure out how to make it equitable and make sure that it's affordable and accessible for everyone. So this kind of dichotomy that the clean energy industry has set up for the past, 30 years, it's over. I don't know when people are going to wake up, but there is no separation between clean energy and equity, because without equity, you're not going to have a clean energy economy that's worth a damn.
I love it. Nikki, any follow-up there?
Yeah, I agree with everything Donnell said, and it's true. We can't have one without the other. And I think that there have been some great efforts that have happened lately, but it needs to happen. It needs to be something that's involved in everything that everybody does. It's not just a couple of great organizations leading the work. We need those organizations to lead the way forward, but there has to be action on all levels, and it has to be a thing that is really at the center and not just a token clause at the end of a certain policy or program. It has to be structured that way from the beginning. And I do think there is a change happening. I don't think it's happening quickly enough or in ways that are meaningful enough. And so, I think, stepping back, making sure that communities have a voice, have, a leading voice, and one that's actually impactful and not just, for show or for, a token presence, I think is really important. And so continuing to speak up internally within large organizations and also highlight and spotlight smaller organizations just getting into the space and giving them the tools is really necessary.
Totally. Great. And Lisa, anything to add there?
You all said it really well. I don't know if I have a ton to add. I mean, it was all really spot on. I think I would maybe just echo of using our platforms, using programs like we're trying to run to amplify voices, to get that story told, and feasibly influence policy and everyone else. So I think I'll just leave it at that.
Totally, and just to totally echo what's been said, that a inequitable clean energy economy of the future won't be of substance without putting equity first, and it's the responsibility of our towns and cities and states to ensure that is a core component of every program and policy. So I really appreciate everything that's been said so far today. I'm going to actually start to ask a few questions from our Q&A as we start to wrap up. We only have about 10 minutes left. So I would actually like to ask a question, and I think we actually have a soundbite on this topic tomorrow, but there's a question from the audience about kind of as we look how to cross-cut programs around electrification and others. The question is, have the speakers seen any electrification programs that seek to work with technical high schools or colleges? Are there those that are especially interested in partnerships with educational hubs in LMI communities, and how are you seeing those go? I mean, we talk all about workforce, but is that reaching certain LMI communities, and are we getting these opportunities in our schools early on as we think more equitably about heat pumps? Anyone want to add anything there?
Yeah, sure. So this is certainly something that we've observed and have been wanting to work on for a long time. The goal is in the next year of the Electrify program, once we kind of have everything up and running, we'll have the capacity to start building up more folks into the pipeline versus just elevating the folks who are just kind of starting out but already have a presence there. And a big thing we found in kind of researching and trying to understand how feasible that is there's a lot of awareness access as well as trainers access. And so looking at how to be able to kind of have these programs, we need to also invest and have opportunities to get more trainers into these areas. And also, working with high schoolers to understand that this is a very viable career path and something to be excited about, that technical schools have a very robust future, that, with the way the clean energy market is going, there's going to be a lot more opportunities and a lot of business in the space, and that it's a very viable and successful career path. And so we've been trying to think through how can we better reach those students, how can we better start in high school and let folks know that you don't have to go to college and go into debt if that's not a career and a pathway that's interesting to you. There are a lot of great opportunities here. So it's really thinking about while I can't say that we've worked with them directly yet, it's certainly something we're thinking about and we hope to do, and kind of getting folks interested and excited earlier on.
Perfect. Great. Lisa?
Yeah, I can definitely add a few things there. I mean, I think first, I think I'm related to Empower. Mass CEC started shifting focus on our workforce development side towards a vocational internship program, which does focus on technical high schools. Although I do think, given bandwidth and other constraints that a lot of those schools face, I don't think that there was an overwhelming amount of traction, although I think it's definitely growing. But I think there's two things that I see as sort of this really great pathway forward. And one is we met and also received applications from some workforce development related focuses under Empower that I think are really keying in on a lot of those things. So I think there's going to be a lot more to come on that. And I think Empower offered that opportunity to sort of expand in ways they might not have been able to expand before, and do more recruitment, expand curriculums, et cetera. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And then Massachusetts recently passed a climate bill that also gave us a lot of yearly money to focus specifically on workforce development. We're still in the process of developing what that will look like, but we'll start sort of putting programs out the door at the beginning of 2022. And so I think there's going to be a lot of focus there as well, and making that pipeline connection. So I think there's going to be a lot more.
Great, great. Two really innovative ways to get more workers and trainers out there. Hanel, I think Lockpower also hosts a innovative way to get more trained workers out there. Is there anything you want to add on the training program at Lockpower? I think you're still on mute, Janelle.
Oh, yeah. Hey, so we're in the process of training and hiring 1,000 workers from New York City's like 4 poorest neighborhoods, which Bronx, Queens, Harlem, Brownsville, Brooklyn. And so we're hiring 1,000 workers. I think we hired like 700 so far, so 300 to go or something like that. And we're training them on clean energy, heat pumps, Wi-Fi. And so really developing the workforce of the future by employing people from vulnerable populations to help to decarbonize New York City. And so we have a list of like 10,000 buildings that burn oil for heat and for hot water. And so we're visiting those 10,000 buildings to do site assessments. People have smartphones. We built a tool with Google that allows us to project manage and capture all the data into a database. And so we really believe that if there's a shortage of highly skilled construction workers and green construction workers across America, certainly the way to solve that is by training and hiring low-income people from vulnerable populations who want great careers in green construction, and training them and putting them in work. And so we're proud that Mayor de Blasio decided to partner with us on that project. And so, yeah, we got a couple hundred new employees who are learning about the clean energy economy every day, and we're super proud of them.
Amazing, awesome. I'm gonna ask just one last question, and then we'll wrap up. A question that we're seeing a lot in the chat that I think all of you touch on in your work around equity and LMI populations is the concept of renters being able to access clean energy and clean heating and cooling tech. So without going into depth too much, is there anything that you'd like to share on how do we connect renters and landlords to get more heat pumps and clean energy out there? What needs to happen in order for renters to be empowered and have this type of access? Nikki, I know you're doing some work on that, or at least your offices. If you just want to have a last comment there, just to answer that question, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I think there's often power and persuasion in numbers. And so, if you are interested as a renter in getting a heat pump, talking to your neighbors, getting, everybody involved and warmed up to the idea, and coming through with, saying that this is something that, we all want, and kind of coming through and being, educated and equipped with the numbers and the kind of data points to go to your landlord and let them know why this is a good idea could be really helpful. So I think education is empowerment there, as well as, teaming up and showing that this is a benefit for the whole building. I think that could be a very helpful resource. And also starting off with simple efficiency measures. Well, it's of course not, anywhere, it's not getting a heat pump. It's a good first start in showing how, you're making an effort and can help make a heat pump install more viable and more energy efficient by doing some of that smaller work first.
Awesome, thank you. And in our last 2 minutes, Lisa, is there anything to add there?
Yeah, I would definitely just echo that again, and also just really continuing to have the conversations, doing the outreach, engaging landlords, engaging renters. I think sometimes we put the value on the onus on the renters and not the landlords, and that, you know, creates a funny story and dynamic there when really they have a lot more of the control. But I love Nikki's view on, well, let's get folks to talk to each other and sort of engage and maybe leverage their group, you know, power to influence the landlords, and, you know, continue to put money into researching sort of the split incentive issues that might be able to influence some sort of policy, or other ideas, maybe green loans or green leases. I'm sorry, green leases, not green loans, but, you know, things of that nature that might help, again, make it just more viable and more attractive for a landlord.
Great. All right, and our last word, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, gas is killing the planet, and it's making your kids and your family sick. The nitrogen dioxide that's being produced is horrible. The data is coming out. This is going to end up being like lead paint. We thought it was fine. We spread lead paint everywhere, and it turns out that lead paint's a disaster for kids. Cooking with gas in our homes is going to be the same way. A couple of years from now, we're just going to be like, oh my God, what were we thinking? So it's time to electrify everything. Thank goodness for the leadership from Mayor de Blasio and Governor Hochul, that New York State can lead the country in electrification. No disrespect to Massachusetts and other places that are also doing incredible things, but we want New York State to really double down and triple down on many of the policies that the Biden-Harris administration is adopting to demonstrate that the benefits of clean energy infrastructure, you know, outweigh the risk, and certainly that clean energy belongs to everyone, including low and moderate income communities, and especially low and moderate income communities. So with that, you know, super happy to join today's panel and good to be here with all of you. I do want to talk to you about Lawrence, Massachusetts. So I hope we can follow up offline. I think we got to get that whole town off of gas, and we'll look forward to working with you guys in Massachusetts. And you too, Nikki, out in Staten Island. So everybody take care. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you. I really appreciate all the input today. That was a great session one. I feel really inspired about, you know, kind of just, you know, getting the concept of equity like more out there, and knowing that we need to put equity first in order to make, you know, impactful programs and policies around heat pumps. So there's more on this. This is only the start of the conversation. We definitely look forward to hearing more about these programs, and I'm sure a year from now, these will not only be pilots, but more robust programs. So that's the end of our time. I just wanted to give another big thank you to Lisa, Nikki, and Danelle. And I'm gonna invite Jen and Jess to come back to us, and then I think we get kicked off.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Oh, I love seeing your face. It makes me so happy. And
it always puts a skip in my step to see you.
Oh, yeah, spring skip. Hello, all. Thank you for joining us. I am Jessica Auget. I am the event manager and industry relations person for NEEP. And this is my lovely co-host, Jennifer Walson. Jennifer.
Hello. As Jess said, Jen Wasson, I am the development manager at NEEP. And it is my pleasure to be a part of the heating electrification workshop today.
I know, I'm fired up. I get super fired up. Yep. Those of you who know me, my allies out there, my sponsors, the people familiar with Jen and I know how fired up we get about a good event.
Can we say heated up?
We can say heated up.
Just to have a bad
That's better.
Here.
That's better. Efficiently heated up. Thank you.
We are efficiently heated up for this.
So Jen and I are here. We're going to be joining for a couple of different sessions during this workshop. And the first one is coming up, and that is our sound bites. How would you explain our sound bites, Jennifer?
Mini TED Talks?
I think we can say that. So we won't say it that way. We'll say, we'll say high energy, short, inspirational talks.
Insightful.
Yeah. I'm excited because this is what adds the texture to the events, right? Keeps you on your toes, and keeps our presenters on their toes as well. And then after that, Jen, should we tell them what we're going to be doing then?
Oh, It's exciting. I think we definitely should get them pumped up even more than they already are.
Yep.
Can I announce it or you?
Was the pumped up thing a pun as well?
I mean, I'm going to just drop them left and right.
Okay.
Here.
All right. We're prepared. We're prepared. We've been warned, everyone. Yes. So we'll be doing our speed networking, which we did during the summit last month and we had a blast, but we kind of always do. We also got feedback that other people
Others
had
seem to as well.
So we brought it here to you to the Heating Electrification Workshop 2021, and we're excited. And we know that sometimes it's like virtual stuff feels forced and awkward. We're telling you it's fun. You're going to have a good time. You're going to meet a bunch of our attendees. Just do it. It's going to be great.
Great way to add to that Rolodeck.
Absolutely. I don't think people have those anymore, but we'll talk about that offline. So with that, we'd like to invite Gabrielle Stebbins to talk to us about packaging solutions.
Yay, welcome, Gabrielle.
All right, and we'll be back in a minute. Gabrielle?
Hi, thank you so much, J&J. It's great to be here today. I'm Gabrielle Stebbins. I'm a senior consultant from Energy Futures Group. And full disclaimer, I'm talking more broadly about a particular program called Zero Energy Now, in which we have had several different versions or packages of heat pump solutions. But to start off, I want to ask you, what if we were all comfortable in our homes? This is my wonderful Lola. I live in Vermont. She's pretty much always cold. What if we were actually warm in the winters and cold in the summers, and not wasting our money, throwing dollars out the window, heating and cooling outside air? And what if here in Vermont, 34% of our greenhouse gas emissions actually come from heating and cooling our buildings? What if we actually also made a dent in terms of that greenhouse gas emission climate consideration? And finally, building off of the conversation you guys were just having, what if we actually seized upon this quadruple win of addressing climate change, making people more comfortable, saving money, and building a workforce that, to what was said just a moment ago, not everybody really actually is inclined to go to college, but they might have phenomenal skills in terms of retrofitting buildings, since we have so many of our existing stock that needs quite a bit of energy improvements. So back in 2015, here in Vermont, several board members of the Building Performance Professionals Association of Vermont got together and they said, hey, how's business? And they're like, I just keep getting these little tiny pint-sized projects, and they're not very effective from a business process, and B, I think I know that many of my customers want more. They want more, but they don't know how to do it. So these contractors basically came up with Zero Energy Now, which Energy Futures Group has been helping out and participating in terms of implementation and program design since 2015. And Zero Energy Now really offers a comprehensive building approach. We use an in-house Excel-based building energy model that essentially optimizes the recommendations. How much solar, what size heat pump? Is it single head, ducted, ductless? Is it a ground source system? We do still here in Vermont, and I know this does not resonate for many other people in many other states, but here in Vermont, a lot of people still chop their own wood for their own heating sources. So we do have wood heat as part of our list of technologies, because Vermonters do use that and it's considered renewable here. But then that tool essentially has another layer where we bundle in all the financing products that are available, as well as the various incentives that are available. Because we're working with qualified professionals that we know that what they're doing is really top notch, and because we've done the modeling to really optimize that project, we also offer a savings guarantee. And what this has resulted in is effectively the three-legged stool that we need to truly decarbonize our economy. We know that we need to maximize efficiency. That is by air sealing, insulation, making sure we have the most efficient equipment and appliances. So we need to maximize efficiency. We also know that a key stool leg here is strategically electrifying. A lot of the homes that we've retrofitted either incorporated heat pumps and also after the fact have incorporated electric vehicles. So both for the thermal and transportation sectors. And then for the third leg of the stool, how do we take the energy that we're still consuming and make it as renewable as possible. So what we've found in most of our projects is sort of a combination of heat pumps with solar with a fair amount of efficiency. And in 2018, we looked at 35 projects. We were only able to get the post-fuel data for 24 of them. And what we found was an average annual fossil fuel and grid-based electric savings of 64%, which for those of you who work in the home performance with Energy Star world, a lot more times the number you see is more like 10 to 15%. So achieving 64% is pretty phenomenal for an average. Average annual savings just under $2,000. And yes, we do see a range. We see a range anywhere from 10% up to 98% in these various projects. The highest that we saw of this study round of those initial 24 projects was 98% savings and just under $4,000 in energy cost savings. So I want to just showcase that there are so many homes that we've serviced, and they run the gamut. We have capes, we have colonials, we have, my favorite here is that pretty little Vermont farmhouse that looks like, you know, every 50 years, a new building structure was added with a new type of heating system. But I'll just give you an example. The upper left-hand picture, that ranch, is an older home project. It was a vintage 1957 home, about 1,300 square feet. These folks were close to retirement. They wanted to age it in home, and they wanted to really get control of their fuel costs because they were worried about moving into retirement and not necessarily being able to deal with the variable fuel costs that they were seeing through their propane and their oil systems. The project in gross cost $56,000 with all the incentives and tax credits available. It came down to about $43,000. Before they did the project, they were spending about $1,900 a year on energy costs. Post that, it was about $250 a year. We did project the savings to be about 81%, and it actually only ended up being about 54%, in part because once we left, they did end up getting an electric vehicle. So what have we learned here? I want to say that obviously with these projects and with these types of price tags, we know that most customers will need to take out a loan. We also know that in order for them to take out a loan, that loan needs to actually recognize the true value of these investments by, for example, offering longer loan terms. But the real key here is that we have proof now that energy savings can pay for these improvements. And here in Vermont, this may or may not be the same wherever you're located. Personally, here in Vermont, we need to break down our program rules, our regulations. We have a fantastic efficiency utility, and then we have distribution utilities, and the distribution utilities do the solar, and the efficiency utility does other work. And the homeowner's like, where do I go? So having a program that really brings all the pieces together so that homeowners actually get the best product at the end is really critical. Most critically, though, Zero Energy Now shows that we can achieve deep 60% and above energy savings in existing homes with available technologies. And that if we really optimize the custom package, we can get up to 100% savings in typical existing homes. So we can do it. The next piece is, how do we scale it? And how do we make it, have both the workforce as well as the financing product to move this into the next gen of having as many houses as possible make this transition. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was great. That was awesome. What would you say, Jen?
I would like to say that was electrifying.
Oh my gosh, there's so many people here. You're going to pound it up.
Bring me on.
Well, you do amuse me. You amuse me. Significant amusement. So let's hear it for Gabrielle. Maybe throw something in the chat. Yes, let's thank her. That was awesome. I think we really shake our presenters up a little when we're like, take your regular PowerPoint presentation and then take away all the text and make it 5 minutes. Does that sound totally interesting? So I think we throw people a little bit for a loop, and we appreciate the time and effort that all of our speakers dedicate to support this market transformation initiative and the culmination of it in this event.
Most definitely.
Yep. So next up, we're going to let Matt Rustica take it away. Matt.
Excellent.
All right. Hi, my name is Matt Rustica. I'm the buildings lead at Acadia Center. a clean energy research and advocacy nonprofit working to advance bold, effective, and equitable clean energy solutions for a livable climate and a stronger economy. It's our mission statement. I'm here to tell you that electrification is a cost-effective way to save money on utility bills and to reduce emissions. This slide shows a chart from our Powerhouse Home Energy Simulator, which is an hourly energy model that uses data from energy efficiency baseline studies conducted around the region to model different homes with different building shell characteristics. It shows annual utility bills for a representative gas heated home in Bangor, Maine, and in Hartford, Connecticut. I want you to pay attention to the first 3 bars from the left here. That's space heating, air conditioning, and water heating. What you can see is that even relative to the historically low gas prices that we've seen in the Northeast in recent years, electrification of these end uses saves money. There are consumer savings beyond heat pumps for HVAC and water heating as well. I want to draw your attention to that brown bar. That's fixed charges. So electric and gas utility companies pay kind of a fixed minimum monthly bill. And by going all electric, some gas homes can save $100 a year or more before they even use any energy. But what I really want to draw out as the core story here is the BE plus WX lines. That stands for beneficial electrification plus weatherization. I think Gabrielle touched on some of this as well. What our analysis shows is that whole home electrification combined with kind of common sense weatherization measures like attic insulation, air sealing, can save hundreds of dollars a year. Again, even compared to our low gas prices. And this analysis shows a reasonably efficient home, like a kind of average efficiency home. For the significant fraction of homes, 20%, 25% of homes that are substantially less efficient than average, these impacts are much more pronounced. As we've all heard, gas prices are volatile. It's probably the most volatile fossil fuel in terms of price. And this winter, they're likely to be significantly higher, the price of gas, than it's been during the last 5 years. So again, the impacts that you see here on this chart, the cost impacts, would be quite a bit bigger, assuming a higher gas price. So you might ask, well, sure, consumers can save some money by electrifying and weatherizing their homes, but what about the system at large? What about the grid? What about the state? Wouldn't it be easier to just kind of use an alternative fuel like biogas rather than go to all this trouble? Well, it turns out that the cost effectiveness of electrification is just as clear in this area. This chart shows the cost of gas to heat pump conversion per lifetime ton of CO2 abated. So if you look at the green part of the columns is the grid cost. So that includes kind of wholesale capacity, transmission, distribution, ancillary services, so forth. The blue part is the incremental upfront cost of the home retrofit itself, and that's described down below the bars. Again, this is all rendered per lifetime ton abated. As you can see, the costs are less across the board than the social cost of carbon. And the social cost of carbon is basically an estimate of future damages to property and to infrastructure due to extreme weather events caused by climate change. So what this means is that converting gas heated homes to heat pumps is literally cheaper than doing nothing. I want to call your attention again, especially to the beneficial electrification plus weatherization bar on the right, which shows the costs for a drafty home. So that's a home that's in kind of the least efficient 20% of homes in terms of its building shell. Targeting those homes in particular is tremendously beneficial, as we can see in terms of the kind of costs per ton abated, and can really help to rapidly reduce emissions in the residential sector in the region. It also happens to fit comfortably within existing energy efficiency program kind of structures, right? It's cost effective in the traditional way. It just takes some segmentation and you can really reap just profound benefits by targeting this, like, the leakiest 20% of homes. And last thing I'll say here is that red line all the way up there at the top of the graph, far away from everything else in the graph, that's the cost of greenhouse gas abatement using renewable natural gas. So while it sounds nice to say that we'll be able to just kind of switch out our fossil gas for renewable gas and just call it a day, it's a pretty tough prospect in reality cost-wise. A lot of the research that we've seen has shown that a small amount of renewable natural gas can be had for a lowish price. But after a certain level of demand, the price of the gas just skyrockets. So it's kind of a bait and switch for consumers who might see low prices in the very beginning, but then would be locked in just to astronomically high prices later on. So in conclusion, electrification saves money for consumers and electrification saves money for society. What's not to like?
Hello.
That was a pretty good conclusion, fairly powerful from Matt.
Yes.
That was great. So I want to let everybody know that we have in the chat, we're seeing a lot of follow-up questions, and in the Q&A as well. Contact information for both speakers is in the chat. You can feel free to email them directly with any follow-up questions. We also heard what you were saying about the text being small on the PowerPoint, and we will work to adjust that moving forward. So thank you for that feedback. This is good though, right? We liked it.
This is very good. I do like it. It, as you said, it adds texture, it changes it up, it gets me thinking about different things. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and they did such a good job that we're actually finishing up a little bit early. So Jen and I will quickly discuss the speed networking again, and then we'll take you to break. So our next session after break, we have a 15-minute break planned, 10-minute break, sorry about that. 10-minute break. After that, we are gonna have, well, put a link in the chat. And if you click that link, it's gonna take you to a speed networking site where Jen will be there to welcome you. And we're going to break you out into small groups, depending on how many people attend. Depends on how many people in the group, but groups about 2 or 3. And give you just a few minutes to introduce yourself, give a quick soundbite of what it is that you do, and exchange your contact information. And then we're going to whisk you out of that room and plunk you into another one. And so we're going to do that a couple times. And it really is a good time. So we hope you'll join us.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And as you said, a great way to meet some new people that you might have met if you were in person, but we're not. So
absolutely right. So we're going to, so that's at 2:45. Again, the link is in the chat currently, and we will catch you over there. So you can come back here at 2:45, hit that link and head on over, and we will meet you there. So go fill up your coffee, fill up your water, go for a quick walk, light stretching, and we will see you at 2:45. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Erin Cosgrove. I am the Public Policy Manager here at NEEP. And what that means is that I research and advise states in the Northeast on how to implement energy efficiency policies that align with decarbonization and climate goals. And I work from West Virginia to Maine. And I'm here today because I will be moderating our next session on policy pathways to heat pump adoption. And just to give everyone a quick overview, this session will explore how heat pumps are recognized as one of the most efficient ways to heat and cool homes, yet there are still many challenges to transforming this market. While energy efficiency programs provide a key starting point for heat pump adoption, market acceleration is necessary to achieve climate goals. So in this discussion, we're going to explore a couple of different policies to help grow access to heat pumps and expand beneficial electrification programs. And with that, I'll bring out my panelists, Alejandra Mejia Cunningham from NRDC, apologies, Will Zai from Con Ed, Bill Bullock from MMWEC, and Keith Levinson from the Vermont Department of Public Service. I'm going to have each panelist shortly introduce themselves before we get started here. And Alejandra, I will start with you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is Alejandra Mejia Cunningham. And Erin, no issues. I truly enjoy hearing people's interpretations of my last name. So I am a building decarbonization advocate with the Natural Resources Defense Council, or NRDC. And I sort of reflect the title of the panel. I support policymakers and advocates as we all work together to develop policies, develop and adopt policies to help real people put in heat pumps in their homes.
Thank you so much. Next, I will go to Will from Con Ed.
Hey, thank you, Erin, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Will Shaw. I work at Con Ed's Energy Efficiency and Demand Management Group. I am an electrification lead here in the department. one of the main roles that I have is to serve as co-chair of the statewide Joint Management Committee, which oversees our statewide New York State Clean Heat program, which is tasked with promoting the adoption of electric heat pump technology in all different customer segments, as well as across various different technologies for the next 6-year period, right? So through 2025. Definitely get very involved in terms of program design, program implementation, and then definitely right now in terms of iteration and process improvements, right? How do we incorporate new technologies? How do we further adoption amongst larger building segments, which are harder to electrify? Very much in the weeds there, working with the other electric utilities, NYSERDA, as well as our state regulators.
Thank you so much, Will. And now I'll pass it off to Bill.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here. My name is Bill Bullock. I am the Senior Manager of Sustainability and Energy Policy for MWIC, and MWIC stands for the Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company. We are a political subdivision of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we serve municipal utilities across the state. And I'm involved in advancing all sustainability initiatives with those members, including the adoption of clean heating.
Thank you. And last but not least, Keith.
Hi, everybody. This is Keith Levinson. I work for the Department of Public Service here in Vermont. Our job description is public advocate in front of the Public Utility Commission, but our real job is to oversee the energy efficiency programs in the state. Among them is our Renewable Energy Standard, and Tier 3 is particularly relevant to this discussion. That's the program where our electric utilities encourage electrification of their customers' thermal loads to reduce fossil fuel use for their customers. So we'll get into more detail.
Great, thank you so much, Keith, and for the rest of the panelists. And so just to let everyone know for how this discussion is going to go, in case you didn't notice, we have quite a few different states represented on the panel, and I'm kind of hoping to take a little deep dive into each one. So audience, feel free to ask questions while I go through each state, and then after that, we'll take a step back and have some broad policy discussions about where we see heat pumps. Different heat pump areas of policy that we need to work on, from workforce to equity to customer adoption. And so I think I'm going to start with a pretty softball question, though, before we talk about what different states are doing. And that is, if anyone would like to answer, Alejandra, I'm going to lean towards you. But why are heat pumps important to climate policy and heating electrification efforts? Yes, Alejandra, if you want to start, and then anyone feel free to add on. Why are heat pumps important to climate change?
Aside from it's my job.
Yeah.
No, they're very important. I think I'm assuming everybody here knows that the building sector accounts for a big chunk of the country's, the world's GHG emissions. In the US, on average, it's about 25%, about a quarter. But the importance there is that that's an average number. In places where other sources of emission either have already been started to be addressed, such as with transportation electrification or mass transit, or they just happen to have less of a specific source, such as the industrial sector. Buildings can actually be the biggest chunk by far in the emissions pie. So we need to start addressing that. And heat pumps allow us, and it's not just the electricity that we ship to our buildings, which thankfully we're sort of well on the path to cleaning our electricity supply in the majority of our states. But it's also the fuels, the fossil fuels that we burn directly inside our homes, largely to heat or condition our space and water. So that's where heat pumps come in, right? Heat pumps allow us to more efficiently, significantly more efficiently, three to 5 times more efficiently, use our existing electric infrastructure to clean up those end uses. And really, heat pumps are, at least in my opinion, the only current solution we have that doesn't involve ripping up a whole set of infrastructure to either change out pipes or keep things tighter. We can just use the existing poles and wires of the electric system. Now, you might ask if this is such a clean, sort of already there solution, why aren't more people adopting heat pumps? And my usual answer to that question is just momentum. People will do what people have always done. If your water heater breaks, you're going to get a like-for-like. You're very likely going to get a like-for-like replacement, or you're going to call your contractor and they are going to put in what they have in their truck. Again, a like-for-like, either electric resistance or a fossil fuel based solution. So we're really trying to change human behavior, and that is challenging. And sort of looking out into the virtual universe, I'm assuming that you're starting to hear where I'm getting at, because you are an energy efficiency crowd. Heat pumps in building electrification, in my mind, is like energy efficiency on steroids. It is something that we have struggled to do for decades, that on paper seems like the easy sort of rational solution, but we know people. They're hard to change. So it sort of really drills down on the type of change that we're aiming for, just with slightly bigger barriers, and also a larger scale, right? We're going to need to touch pretty much every home that's already been built to get it to where we need it to be.
Great, thank you so much for that overview of heat pumps and how they fit into the greatest to what we're trying to do in evolving climate policy and reducing emissions. And with that, now I'm going to dive into the states that we have on the panel. And so just so the audience knows, we'll be taking a tour of Vermont, New York, and Massachusetts. So please feel free to ask questions as we go through. And I'm actually going to start with Keith from Vermont. And that is because I have to say, this was probably, I guess shocking, I don't know if that's the best word to describe it, but I was surprised at the amount of heat pumps that have been installed, not from an energy efficiency program, but actually from the Tier 3 program. And just to give some numbers before I let you discuss Tier 3, Keith, in 2014, Vermont installed 24 heat pumps. In 2015 and 2016, they upped it to about 2,000 heat pumps a year. I think that was the first year Tier 3 was done by the utilities. After that, 2017 and 2018, we saw 4,000 heat pumps or more a year. And in 2019, over 5,000 heat pumps or more a year. And so with that, Keith, I would pass it to you to talk about what Tier 3 is and how that has changed or encouraged heat pump adoption in Vermont.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. That sort of paints the big picture. Tier 3 is the third tier of our renewable energy standard here in Vermont. The first one, Tier 1 being utility scale renewable generation, Tier 2 being smaller scale distributed generation, and Tier 3, which was added, I wasn't around when this legislation was enacted, but the Tier 3 was a way to placate the utilities and boost load and revenue for the utilities at simultaneously reducing fossil fuel use. So for Vermont, Tier 3 is about decarbonization as opposed to energy efficiency. We have sort of competing goals through our renewable energy standard of greening up, decarbonizing the generation mix while boosting load through Tier 3. So it's a very ambitious goal, and it's going to be a challenge for the utilities to to satisfy both the tier 1 and 2 requirements, as well as electrifying thermal loads and transportation. So that's the big picture. Tier 3 has actually pushed a lot of that heat pump adoption in Vermont. It turns out to be one of the most cost-effective ways for the utilities to meet their tier 3 obligations. I think it's something like 65% of their fossil fuel reductions through tier 3 are achieved through heat pump. So that explains the meteoric rise of adoption of heat pumps. There are other aspects to tier 3 that we don't need to discuss here, but just as a contrast, electric vehicles, which would seem to be another cost-effective way of decarbonizing our or reducing our fossil fuel use through tier 3, that only accounts for something like 6 or 7% of the tier 3 savings. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into now, but heat pumps were initially pushed by our energy efficiency utilities. Vermont is a little bit different model from most states. We've consolidated all the energy efficiency programs from the utilities into under one roof, which is Efficiency Vermont. Burlington has its own program as well. Efficiency Vermont initially began incentivizing heat pump adoption a couple years before the Renewable Energy Standard went into effect. And they did that on the basis of giving incentives for cold climate rated heat pumps. And NEEP is at the cutting edge of setting up a specification for what that means. So based on that incremental savings between a baseline heat pump and a cold climate rated heat pump, Efficiency Vermont was giving people incentives. And the uptake was surprisingly good, but nothing like what we're seeing right now. And I think that exponential rise is based on the tier 3 incentives that all of the utilities are now offering.
I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say you took my next question, Keith, because I was going to bring up that Vermont had one of the first efficiency utilities. But good to know. Thank you for thinking ahead and answering that. But yeah, so it's interesting. So it's not so much the efficiency utility, you could say, that has pushed it in Vermont, but it was at Act 56 towards energy optimization that has really helped propel the market there. And great. So with that, I'm going to bounce to New York and we'll talk to Con Ed. We'll talk Con Ed with Will. And Will actually kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about New York State's Clean Heat program that was announced in April 2020 and what that has done to change Con Ed's approach to heat pumps.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kicked off the program statewide in April of 2020. How it's sort of changed, and I guess just a little bit for context, we at Con Edison, as well as the other electric utilities in New York before Clean Heat, it had various heat pump incentives, right, through various different programs. But this statewide approach really tried to essentially bring everything under one roof, right, and really try and realign on specific design requirements and sort of, actions expected, right, for these equipment as they're installed, right? So one sort of key early eligibility criteria that we had for the prescriptive residential installs was, sort of pegging eligibility to the NEEP list, right, in terms of what is a cold climate air source heat pump model, which had, the certain minimum eligibility COP, right, 1.75 at 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So from the get-go, there was a real push to try and only incentivize the models that were capable of operating at very cold temperatures, to support our state's needs. And another sort of new program requirement was, really emphasizing the right sizing, right, a manual J calculation, right, designing to meet the full load of a building's, the full building's heating load, BHL. So really, these were some of the main sort of drivers as this program started off. We really built off of NYSERDA's previous programs. They had both air and ground source incentive programs. That responsibility was transferred over to us as we are now implementing on the statewide approach. Although it started off with a very residential 1 to 4 unit family focus, we quickly realized the need to keep iterating and to expand it, right? There's no one size fits all when it comes to the technologies or even the customer segments. Right? So right now what we're trying to do is stay fast moving, stay very flexible, as new technologies come on the horizon, as we're trying to provide the right solutions for our building stock, right, in New York City, right? A lot of older buildings, a lot of larger buildings, pre-war, et cetera, how do we make the program work for these customers, right? Because the value proposition is very different than say, 1 to 4 family homeowner in Westchester, upstate. So really, in terms of a statewide program, we work together, right? There's representatives from each of the utilities, as well as NYSERDA. We meet on a recurring basis, essentially to kind of co-implement, co-design, and to co-run this program, really with the customer and contractors' perspective in mind, right? There was a real sense of, programs and equipment and sales don't stop at the border, right, of a certain service territory, right? So we definitely had that in mind when it comes to the need of having a statewide program, right? So, pros and cons, right? Definitely more challenges when you have a lot of additional stakeholders and constituents that you have to account for, but at the same time, it's very beneficial, right? Because customers and contractors can be confident, right? There's one program as consistent as it can be. As additions and changes sort of happen, everyone's sort of moving along with one voice, right? So we are now in year 2, going into year 3, right? So we're trying to get better every year as we continue working on this.
Thank you so much. And then you brought up NYSERDA, and I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the role that they play in the clean heat pump program space as a quasi-governmental agency. Yeah,
absolutely. So, although we, as the electric investor-owned utilities, run the incentive programs, NYSERDA still very much is involved in a couple of different activities, right? Broadly defined as market development, right? They have additional funding, allocated specifically for that, right? When it comes to marketing, training, right? Getting people into the workforce. And they also fund a series of studies, right, in terms of pilots or demonstration projects to further, more cutting edge technology or things that are more emerging, right? So they are definitely very much a partner, to the utilities here in this effort, as we essentially work towards one common goal.
Great, thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to go to Bill in Massachusetts. And now Bill works with the Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company. And so first, I'm going to ask you to maybe give us a one-on-one on what that is.
Okay, sure. So it goes way back, beginning in between 1886 and 1926, 40 towns in Massachusetts decided to own their own electric utility. So the town voted and they established a utility for this new technology that was distributed electricity. And between then and about the 60s, they were buying electricity from investor-owned type utilities, vertically integrated. And in 1969, they formed these 40 municipal utilities, formed MWIC, because what they wanted to do was to start to participate in the NEEP pool markets, which was just starting to be formed at the time. And they wanted some leverage to build their own assets. It was very hard for an individual town to build a power plant, but joining together and cooperating through MWIC, they were able to create an organization that could raise funds, they could issue bonds, and share in the ownership of generation assets. So that's how MWIC got started. And of course, the at first they were building, central power plants, but that has obviously evolved with the market. So now we own wind assets and solar assets and energy storage assets, as well as run energy efficiency programs for the members, including decarbonization programs. So that's sort of a little history on how MWIC came to be and how it serves its municipal utility members.
Thank you, Bill. And now I'm going to ask you to please elaborate on the heat pump program that you offer at MWIC and how it is that the utilities have decided to invest and prioritize that program.
Sure. And one thing about local control and having a nonprofit municipality own their power distribution system is that prices tend to be lower. So you're seeing, lower electric costs in the municipal territories. Not many municipalities own a gas system. Some do. So the spark spread between the gas heating and the electric heating, particularly given the efficiency of heat pumps, is relatively positive. So you can, it's economically advantageous to customers besides the initial upfront cost to deploy heat pumps. So it won't be costing them more to heat their homes, which is a very important characteristic for a lot of people. So our heat pump program, we're providing incentives. We cooperate with the mass save utility when there's overlap in the territory. So where there's a gas utility that is part of mass save, they're also sort of contributing to make the shift to clean heat. So we're cooperating there. We provide incentives, and we've also developed a like Will was talking about a manual J type calculation that helps ensure good outcomes. So we want to be sure that when customers are deploying heat pumps, they're having a good experience, that it's properly sized, and that they realize the efficiency benefits that are promised. So we do have a special consultation where we're paying for a manual J calculation to support that in addition to the incentive, so that that customers can become very comfortable with the new technology and can sort through if they've got an array of bids, they can kind of sort through and figure out who has sized the system properly and is ensuring that it will work and deliver the benefits that we're.
Great, thank you. And then with that, I will complete the quick tour of the different ways that energy efficiency programs or utilities are employing heat pumps. And I will just a quick reminder for the audience to please send any questions that you have for the panelists in. But with that, I'm going to jump into some of my own questions. One theme that kind of came up a lot when everyone was talking was contractors and getting contractors involved in the process. And so I'm wondering if anyone would like to kind of share how they involve contractors in their process in their state, or any barriers that they've come across with that group. And I'll open it up to anyone. Go ahead.
Sure. What we've done is we found that the heat pump manufacturers are very good at, they've been very good at developing an ecosystem. So they've been training contractors on how to apply their specific technology. So we found that by going to the equipment manufacturers, we could get access to their contractors and ones that have been qualified by them because they are doing a lot of training. And so when a customer comes to us and asks us if we can recommend a contractor, we have that have been trained by various manufacturers.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Alejandra.
So I am the obvious exception to the rule in the panel, in that I actually don't run programs. So absolutely take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But I'm sort of obsessed with program design. And this comes from years of trying to get it right, or watching colleagues in energy efficiency try to get it right. So I have had a lot of conversations, and I was struck by will. There's just so many tensions in getting program design right, but at the same time holding the programs accountable, because these are, at the end of it, we're spending people's money, and navigating those tensions is where, in my experience, most of the wheels start coming off the bus, the best intention wheels. And specifically for dealing with contractors, it is you're asking them to take some risk. You're asking them to sell a product that they have a lot less experience with. And so having had a lot of conversations around the country about what is working, there's a secret sauce in getting that balance right, in making sure that whatever rules, requirements you're putting in place don't make it harder for the contractor to participate in your program, to benefit, to profit from your program, because you are, after all, asking them to do things. And that is where one thing that Will said about the tension between like a statewide program and a local program is, I have heard that the manufacturers are really great in general in knowing their distribution network, but that's not always the case. In some pockets, you will need more research and more understanding, more mapping of who does what. And I imagine that is some of this, the tension that Will was talking about when bringing it to a statewide program. How do you map? How do you understand the markets, the industry you are delving into?
Anybody want to take a first stab at that question, or explain how you've navigated that issue?
Yeah, maybe quickly, I'm not sure if it's directly the question, but maybe just to add on to that is, for sure, I think being able to work very closely with the contractor network, right, and really being true partners in this together, I think is very key, right? Some of the challenges we definitely have utility targets, statewide targets, contractor sort of, just a day-to-day sort of bread and butter, what they do. I think for us, what we try and keep in mind and try and put ourselves in their shoes is, from the people on the field, right, actually installing the systems, right? And in a lot of these cases, it's their livelihoods, right? It's what they do, especially now, given the economy the way it is, with issues of, the supply chain example, for example, right? Some of these things are very top of mind when it comes to what requirements are being asked, what incentive levels are out there, right? What additional program rules are we asking contractors to comply with, right? To be eligible for incentives. For us, it's striking the right balance between, okay, what is essentially the bare minimum, right? In order to sort of make sure and ensure we're meeting the state's goals effectively and meeting, our stakeholders' expectations, right? In terms of successful program design, while not overly burdening contractors, right, in terms of what they are expected to do in their day-to-day, right? So especially nowadays, coming on year end, coming with, multiple months of sort of supply chain backlogs, right? It's like, how do we take that into consideration, right? How do we work with them, right? And come with, a triple win, right? For the contractors, for the utilities, as well as to our stakeholders, right? So always trying to keep that in mind and be better about that.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think, the idea of these programs is that they should be removing barriers and hurdles for both contractors and customers, and you're not wanting to put another hurdle in their way. That does not make
exactly.
Yeah, I just want to add to the discussion a little bit from the overview of Vermont programs. I mean, apparently there are enough contractors to be installing it at quite a clip. My concern, though, is the quality of those installations. You know, if the bottom line here is to reduce fossil fuel use, reduce carbon emissions, if we're pushing contractors who don't have a lot of experience to get into this business, the quality of those installations may go down. The heat pump's ability to displace those fossil fuels is going to be inhibited. And we may be getting into a situation where we're releasing refrigerants on installation and on replacement, or through lack of proper maintenance that offsets a lot of the gains that we're making on the fossil fuel side. So just a red flag. I don't know what the solution is. I just am concerned about that.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Keith, because I think it's both getting being involved with contractors, and then also the issue of training the workforce to install clean heat technology, and who trains the workforce, how does the workforce transition? And on that note, I actually kind of wanted to maybe do a quick state highlight for Colorado. Alejandra, I hope that this cues this up correctly, but I believe they just passed a bill that was supported by labor unions out in the state. And maybe if you could identify some aspects of that bill that kind of helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually to give the government of Colorado and the conservation community their credit, they passed a big package of buildings laws. All in all, 4 laws. They go from gas and man-side management to building performance standards to the building electrification law, which I think, Aaron, was the one you were referencing. And then to a clean heat standard that really applies to most utilities in the state and really gets them on a trajectory, sort of a steady trajectory to meet the state's long-term building emission reduction goals for the building sector. So there is significant value. How I look at that package is that it provides the initial investment needed and a good steady source of investment in building electrification, but at the end and at the same time gets that trajectory going, that steady trajectory of here's the money, these are the goals, we will meet the goals. So, but to focus a little bit more on the workforce piece in the building electrification component, what that law does is eventually it will set goals. Right now, the first cycle of plan, it requires investor-owned utilities to file building electrification plans, just like you would with energy efficiency with the commission. And after this first round of goals, the plans, the commission will set goals that are on pace to that 2050 building reduction pace. Just again, like you would with energy efficiency goals, and then the utilities must get their customers there. What that bill also requires is that a certain type of building electrification work at a certain scale. So for larger buildings larger than 14,000 square feet, in not in unit particularly, but the building central systems, that job use contractors that have that meet specific higher thresholds of apprenticeship utilization. So it's not exactly a you must use organized labor requirement. It is essentially it translates to you must provide the benefits, the career and sort of family sustaining wage benefits that organized labor shops do. So we think that of the contractors in Colorado that meet these requirements, only about 50% are organized labor or union shops. Others are non-union shops, but they compete fairly with the fair for union requirements. So that was a big piece labor wanted to see in this law, and it makes sense, right? If we are embarking on a transition to healthier, cleaner buildings, we want to make sure we're doing it equitably. But also, and I think, yes, there of course was a political benefit to having labor support this bill, but I see huge policy benefit as well, because Aaron, as you were saying, building electrification has a huge workforce development need. And you know what unions do really well? They develop workforce. They train people to do good jobs, and good work. So that I think by setting those workforce requirements, workforce quality requirements in that law, the hope is that these workforce development experts, rather than it become a us versus them fight about what building electrification is, they have a stake in seeing it to be successful. And in order to see it be successful, they will be training the workforce that we need to get this done right. Because we all know, I think someone referenced earlier, we need to size the heat pumps right. We need to make sure, say, the water heaters don't use recirculation pumps. These are details that everybody needs to know. Everybody that's installing these systems need to know. Otherwise, we're going to have to go back and retouch that home. And there is significant actual policy value in engaging these experts in getting the training done right.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of sizing and making sure they're installed correctly, Bill, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you actually just embed that in the municipal program when you offer heat pump installation, and why you decided to build that into your program there.
Sure. So, like, we realize that that customers are getting a lot of are being approached by a lot of different contractors, and we wanted to be sure that the outcomes were good. We didn't want to get a high bill complaint from customers because it wasn't delivering the savings that they thought it would. So we worked with a partner called Center for Eco Technology, which is also a nonprofit, and they are working with us to provide consultations to people. So if someone has a question like, what is a heat pump? They'll walk them through that process and why it is a good idea for them. And then they'll monitor the project, ask to review the calculations that were used for sizing, and then provide, say it's okay, review it, and it was installed according to good design practices. And then, the incentive will go to the customer following that. So we found that, the idea of trying to get customers comfortable with the technology, because it is a very unknown thing for some people. There's not a lot of awareness, even though we do try to make people aware of it. I don't think people are thinking, like I think Alejandra pointed out, that people aren't thinking about it until their existing system fails, what they're going to replace it with. So trying to do more outreach on that and doing the consultation when someone thinks their furnace is old, and having that consultation when they're looking at the options is a really good way of making sure that they're ready to make and they have the data they need to make the purchase decision when it's ready to go. So we don't require them to have a contract in hand. We say you can use this consultation service at any time that you have a question about a heat pump in your application. So we found that has made a difference for some customers in consideration, and it builds in the time lead that they need in order to make the investment decision. We found that is working well.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to a question we have from the audience, open to all panelists. It states positive consumer economics are key to heat pump adoption. And to maximize consumer benefits, how can heat pump programs help customers also improve building envelope efficiency, which can reduce the size and cost of heat pump system installed, as well as reduce operational costs? So I guess general question, how are we talking about weatherization and retrofitting in our heat pump programs? And who wants to take it first?
I can dive in if you want. The way heat pumps were rolled out in Vermont, original push was from an energy efficiency organization, Efficiency Vermont. And we were very careful to not promote heat pumps as a cost-saving measure. In Vermont, you know, electricity is relatively expensive, even though it's dropping relative to the rest of the Northeast. Heat pumps, you know, they are more efficient than alternatives, but the cost per BTU is comparable to oil. It's probably more expensive than natural gas. And I don't know that customers are always aware of that. You know, contractors and programs are pushing these heat pumps with the sort of reading between the lines. It sounds like they're promoting them for energy cost reasons. So that's something we need to be careful of. And I had another point that escapes me right now, but I'll chime back in if I remember it.
Yeah, Keith, just to add on to that, I think that, you know, I think we're in a unique position where, you know, the municipal light plants have electric costs that are, you know, 20 to 40% lower than their investor-owned utility brethren. So there is sort of a benefit that they have starting out. Not all of them have as low a cost, but it is meaningful in the calculation. And I think, you know, across Massachusetts, you'll see that there is savings when put up against either propane heat or oil heat.
I did remember, the question had to do with weatherization as well. What we've done for the market rate installations is to, we've characterized the measure in two different ways. One is for a fully weatherized home, and one is for a standard unweatherized. So the utilities get a premium savings based on the fact that they're installing these in a weatherized home. So the question is, how do they confirm whether a home is weatherized when they're installing a heat pump? And the practical way to do that is to see if they've gone through one of our weatherization programs. For our low-income weatherization assistance program, it's a very clear synergy there. And recently we've been working with the local community action organizations to allow them to install heat pumps in a weatherized home at no cost to the homeowner. And that's clearly a way that we can ensure that these are going into weatherized homes. We're also piloting a program to give the homeowners an integrated control that will optimize the use of the heat pump for either cost, if the customer wants that, or for carbon abatement. So two different crossover points depending on which you'd like to optimize for. We don't know how successful that's going to be, but we're piloting it right now. And my guess is that it will reduce the fossil fuel use substantially. It's designed to get the most runtime out of your most efficient or least carbon emitting heating system. So we'll see.
Thank you. The audience didn't get to see it, but as soon as he mentioned that you can optimize the heat pump for carbon or cost, a couple of us were nodding and smiling. Will, did you want to jump in on the weatherization plus heat pumps?
Yeah, just quickly adding on to Bill and Keith, we recently, again, shifting gears a little bit in terms of customer segments, but now towards the larger building segments. In our Clean Heat program back in July, we recently added a new measure. It's just called, heat pump plus envelope, right? In terms of a combined offering within the program, incentivized at a higher dollar amount. per MMBTU of energy savings. And our intent there was really to, get customers and contractors and designers to think of it holistically, and really think of the connection between the two. So without getting into the weeds on eligibility, really what we're trying to say is, if you can show through the energy modeling a quantifiable decrease in the size of the heat pump that you would otherwise would have had to put in without the weatherization measures, that coupled with the actual weatherization measures that are actually implemented will be incentivized at a higher rate, right? So it definitely got the industry's attention, right, once we had rolled that out. And we're trying to make that as streamlined as a process as possible, right? We see the interest. We think the industry really wants to promote those types of projects, and we do want to meet them there with the right incentive. And again, of course, with a process that's not overly burdensome or complicated to accommodate that. And quickly, since I heard the integrated controls piece, we are also rolled that out too in terms of adding additional incentives for customers that do include that as part of the heat pump project that they install for the reasons for optimization, right? Between cost and comfort, as well as maximizing heating usage. And then sort of the newest step we have taken to is exploring, if the customer chooses to decommission their existing fossil fuel system at the same time, we are also incentivizing that at a higher rate as well, right? Recognizing the costs associated with doing so, but also essentially letting the customers realize, hey, this is something the heat pumps are technically and physically able to support up to very cold temperatures. And in order for us to know for sure that they're actually using it in the coldest temperatures, coupling that with a decommissioning is something we're looking to test right now and see if that's an effective strategy.
Thank you. And Alejandra, I wanted to go to you to see if you had any programs that you've seen from your work in decarbonization that are really successfully integrating weatherization with heat pumps to lower costs.
Yeah, I think what I had in mind to say if you turned to me was, yes, do it. Because it's so important for so many reasons. Of course, first and foremost, to keep folks sort of today bills down, but it's all in the longer term. I think the efficiency part of efficient building decarbonization is essential for keeping infrastructure, grid infrastructure costs down. If we're just adding electric load willy-nilly to air condition or heat the entire neighborhood, we're going to have to add the capacitors and the poles and wires to air condition and heat the entire neighborhood. So yes, do it. The one program that does come to mind is the Association for Advanced Energy, or AEA. I'm blanking on what AEA stands for. They implement the low income weatherization program here in California. And they have done really great work in multifamily buildings. So it's high touch, low income population. And they have had, at least in my opinion, a lot of reverberations in the California market. They did a lot of the early electrification in a building segment that tends to be considered sort of like more challenging, more complex. It's not single family homes drop in. But they have, because they are higher touch projects, they created a lot of the early case studies, the workforce development, the soft knowledge, as well as the hard knowledge. And again, it's California climates. It's not, it's a different question than say Vermont. But I definitely have liked that program for what it has done, both for the properties it has touched, but also for what it has added to the knowledge base in California through doing that work.
Great, thank you so much. And we have less than 10 minutes, probably more like 5 minutes, but I wanted to ask a question and maybe do a sort of a lightning round if everyone could answer in a minute or less. It's a question from the audience, which is, what are the options for PUCs to place regulatory value on fuel switching, particularly fuel switching for deliver fuels or unregulated fuels? So if you could see PUCs take a step in this direction, I'm going to just limit you to that. What would you kind of like to see them do? And anyone who wants to go first?
It's an easy one for Vermont, where our renewable energy standard has gone a long way toward leveling the playing field for all fossil fuels. I think that's the way to go. That was legislatively inspired as opposed to the Public Utility Commission, but it's a good model.
Thank you.
And it's the same thing in Massachusetts. So the most recent legislation signed in the spring included greenhouse gas emission inventories for the program, so that there is reporting on the carbon savings from those programs. We're currently working on a carbon accounting program for our members with a grant from the American Power Association.
I love the question. I think delivered fuels are such a big opportunity. And I would encourage us to look at what the transportation sector has done. Transportation electrification has done a lot of great work on the beneficial economic effects of putting the downward pressure that adding good load will have on everybody else's rates. And they've innovated a lot in rate design, in even just spending on infrastructure. So I think there's a lot to be mined from that sector.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Will, but anything you'd like to see from the Department of Public Service in New York, or any guidance from the regulatory authority you think would be valuable?
Just nothing more from what Alejandra and the others have added at this point. Definitely we're going to continue working very closely with our state regulators, right, to ensure the right program design. Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay, and now I have I think I have space for one more very quick question, and that is, we didn't really get to talk about how to make these programs look at equity and focus on underserved communities. And I was just wondering if we could kind of do maybe one issue you see in trying to serve these populations, and I don't know if there is an answer, but just something you want to try to solve this year. And I'll leave it open to the group first.
Quantify the non-energy benefits, including the indoor air quality.
Jumped right in. Keith, do you want to go next?
I was going to say essentially the same thing, but obviously the economic barrier is the big one for underserved communities, low-income communities, BIPOC communities. So whatever utilities can do to overcome that barrier, do it.
And we're looking at financing, so we think low-cost financing that with extended terms, sort of a tariff on bill where the financing goes with the meter as opposed to a bill to the customer, can help adoption.
And just quickly, maybe not in terms of a explicit solution right now, but at least in terms of a mantra, we definitely want to have a do no harm approach, right, when it comes to the program design as for the offerings. We're very aware that there are things that happen with any decision, right, especially when it comes to allocations, right, when it comes to rent, to bills, to who gets to make those decisions down the road in terms of after we've made any sort of action, either from a utility or energy efficiency perspective, right? just being very careful, very mindful to make sure that it doesn't lead to any sort of negative externalities, right? Or in terms of people seeing one thing and reacting, negatively towards it. So definitely do no harm approach. Try and be very careful in the rollout, especially for the low to moderate income and disadvantaged communities.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for participating in this panel. This is a great discussion on heat pump policy and what to look for. And I hope to have you all back here next year, maybe, to talk about a new evolving topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. It was a great discussion.
Thanks.
Great.
Okay, and with that, I am going to invite Dave and Derek back on the stage to help me round out our first day.
Great job, Aaron. Have fun?
Oh yes, always have fun when I talk about heat pump policy and energy efficiency.
And Derek, great job with panel one. So we are in the wrap up of day one. Thank you all so much for sticking with us today. Before I do a little preview for tomorrow and do a few thank yous, we want to just catch in maybe a couple of reflections. And Derek, you had a couple to share before we close out.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'll go first, and maybe Erin has a few to share as well, and she's had a second to look back on her session. But I'd say a big reflection that I wanted to share today was that traction is being made in both the policy and equity landscape when it comes to implementing heat pumps alongside other non-energy benefits, such as addressing air pollution, workforce, economic inequities. Like, there are organizations and programs and businesses like Lockpower that are looking at employing innovative ways to tile those together and make it a simple and effective process that engages a number of folks from all different backgrounds to get more heat pumps installed in our buildings of all types. The other reflection I'd like to share is I think it rang true, especially in the first session. There is demand for heat pumps and other clean heating and cooling tech and other tech, but there just lacks a simple and effective way to get the tools and education into the hands of those that need them. And it's often the case of they don't know how to ask for the help. And so we need to look for thoughtful and innovative ways to engage them. And they obviously want support, and they need it. So I think I really just want to applaud everyone today for, being very empathetic and thoughtful in how they look for new impactful ways to get more heat pumps in our buildings and to lift up entire populations and communities. So that's all I would like to share today. And if Aaron has anything to add, that's great. But I just wanted to thank everyone for a great day one of the workshop.
Yeah, Aaron, you've had about 60 seconds to perspective on your panel. But so if there are any last thoughts from you on your panel or anything else you saw today.
Yeah, I guess what I'll just say is that, I work in many different states in the regulatory space, and I always like to caution any advice I give states with make sure that it fits with your plan and with what you want to do. And I hope that my panel showed everyone that there's many different ways to start heat pump adoption, and states are going at it at all different angles. And hopefully maybe we'll see some more states take that initiative next year. And I hope everyone learned about the wide array of approaches to heat pump adoption.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys. I'm going to just do a little bit of a rundown. I didn't follow all of the discussion in the chat, but I heard it was robust, and I'm glad to be able to say that our program tomorrow, I think will actually hit on some of the topics that were of question. Obviously, I'm excited. I've got to be kicking off the afternoon with a session, getting a little bit into the weeds about air source heat pump configurations, but I think it should be a very interesting conversation. We get into sort of like looking forward a little bit at some of the newest solutions in our second panel. And we've got a couple of other really exciting sound bites. And so with that, you know, I want to again thank our lead sponsors, Daikin, Mitsubishi, Trane, Carrier, Connecticut, Deep, and our supporting sponsors, Fujitsu and Abode, for making this event possible. And certainly all of you for being here today. So look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. We'll get kicked off again at 1 o'clock. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.